Alright, so we're going to start. This is the start of the recording for this session. This is session number 2, week 2 of the Android class. And today we're going to start out installing the virtual machine emulators and connecting Eclipse with the emulators. And so to get you guys started, if you just came in, you're going to want to start doing this. What you're going to do is you're going to go to www.bhacker.com/emulators. If you do that, you get to this little window here. I made the window kind of small. These are the x86 emulators that have been known. I know they work. These are the ones that I use. You can get them also if you do a Google search on x86 Android emulators. However, when you try them, they may not necessarily all work, and they may not necessarily be all formatted the way you want them to be formatted. These work. These are great. So I would download at a minimum Android 4.3, the Jelly Bean version, which is running on API 18. The reason why I have the lower level APIs on here is because these run a little bit lower tech. They're faster running, and it's kind of like one extreme to the other. If you test in between, that's great, but you really want to know if it's going to work on the 8 to 9s, which is the earlier versions versus the later versions. It's a good way for testing. If you want, you can download all of them. If you try to do that right now, you're probably not going to have enough time. So what you want to do is click on one, save it to the hard disk. If you do it, you'll see something that has an ISO extension on the end of it. Don't unzip it, don't do anything. Just click on save, click on it, save it to your disk, and let it download. And in a few minutes, we're going to install it. Last time, when you guys were here, we looked at, and now that you guys have written that down, I hope. Let me cancel this here. You need to install, the other step that you needed to do, which was introduced at the end of last week's session, was to download VirtualBox. You're going to need that as well. And so your homework was to download VirtualBox, and it was also to download Eclipse and install that and update it with all the latest APIs on it. To get VirtualBox, you go to it's on an Oracle website actually. Oracle VM VirtualBox. I just did a quick Google search for it. You'll see that there is 64-bit client. So somebody was asking me earlier about 32-bit client. I don't see it. Interesting. It may only work on a 64-bit system. Also, if you're running on a 32-bit system, you're going to have to turn on what's called emulation, hardware emulation support. In order to do this, if you're going to get into this type of development, you're really going to do it seriously, you need a 8 gigs of RAM, about 128 hard drive will do it, 2 gig hard drive, to 200 gigabyte drive, 8 gigs of RAM, hardware acceleration for virtual machine support, 64-bit processor. That's the perfect spec. Not all you guys are going to have that. So what's going to end up happening is everything's going to run a little buggy, things are going to run a little slow on you. So just keep that in mind. If you've got 4 gigs of RAM, you're probably in good shape. If you've got 2 gigs of RAM, I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't try it. Upgrade that computer or do something. Borrow a computer. It's not going to work too well with 2 gigs. So long story short, this may or may not work. I had somebody, you said that you downloaded it on a 32 system, it's not working. It may not work. You need a really good development system for this. You're going to need it for the iOS course as well. If you're taking the taking the iPhone course, you just can't do it on crappy hardware or on low grade, slower hardware. It just doesn't support it. I'm sorry. So you can get by without using virtual machine. You don't have to use virtual machine. If that's the case, you're going to use the built-in emulators or another solution. You could probably come up with another solution for it. I like the VirtualBox solution. I thought that they had a 32-bit version of this, though. Let me just take a quick look here, though. I thought for a while that they had it. They were supporting it. You could possibly get it off of the Oracle site. Here's the Oracle Virtual Machine. Actually, you might want to try this site here. You could possibly get it from, what I did is I just went to, let me just go back here for a second. I went and I typed in VirtualBox download 32-bit. I know that they make one. It's not going to be on the VirtualBox website, but you can get it from here. It's the same thing. This is the Oracle website, and I see it right here. Oracle VM VirtualBox. I see it right here. So I would try this one. This looks like it's supported all the way back to XP version too of Windows. So I would try that one if you're on this system. So let's make sure everyone's got what they need downloaded first. I guess by show of hands, how many people are still downloading? Still downloading? Okay, so I'm going to give it about 5 minutes then. Let me pause this for a second. All right, once you have it downloaded, and so now I can get rid of this stuff. I don't need this anymore. Once you have it downloaded, here's what I've done. I dragged it. I'm on a MacBook. If you're on a Windows machine, you can drag it anywhere you want. It doesn't really matter where you drag it, but wherever you drag it to, leave it there. Which means if it's on your desktop right now, move it off your desktop. Put it somewhere where it's going to sit permanently, because you're not going to get rid of it. I put it in my documents folder, and here they are. I have my 3 ISOs sitting here. On my system, they look like this. Man, that's a really crappy looking screen. It has a .ISO, and I have 3 of them. You don't need 3 of them, you just need 1 of them right now. I'm going to show you a couple things with this. You can load it as an emulator. These are live disks. These are live disks that load up, or you can install it into your emulation software. If you're on Windows, don't try to unzip this. Don't try to install this. Just leave them alone. Copy them into some place where they can just sit forever. You can stick them, if you wanted to, you can stick them inside your Android folder. Keep it all organized. So now what the next thing you're going to do is, your homework was to install Android from last week, which you guys mostly did. Update it, and also install VirtualBox. So you all have VirtualBox installed. So open up your VirtualBox now. You open up your VirtualBox, it looks like this. Yours is going to be empty over here. So yours will be empty. So now that we all have it open, hopefully everybody has it open, I'm going to try and go through this on the slower side. And then if you have questions, raise your hand, because I'm not going to know who's got questions with all the chitter chatter and stuff. When we start doing this, all of a sudden it's going to get louder in here. So go ahead and click New. If you click on New, you get this here Create Virtual Machine window that comes up. I'm going to put my 4.3 in here. I only have 1 of them in there. I just tested it out because this is actually a brand new computer, so I don't have anything installed on here, which is great because then I can show you from scratch how to do it. So I have 2 naming conventions that I use that you might want to adapt, or you don't have to. There's 2 different ways of doing this. You can load the ISO like a fake disk, and you load it, and I call those things emulators. So I use the word emulator. Or you can install it. We're going to do both right now. You can install it into the system, and then I label it Android. So this one I'm going to install. I'm going to install this, but I'm going to load it as an emulator first. So I'm going to call it Android. So I'm going to type in Android. And this is my 4.3, so I'm going to go 4.3. It just helps me remember which image this is. You can use your own naming convention if you want. You can't put any spaces in the name. The name can't have any spaces. I'd put the version on there because at least you know what you're loading. Under the type, click on Linux. Under the version, go all the way back up and click on 2.4 or 2.6. Use the 64-bit. These are 64-bit ISOs. I know you might be on a 32-bit system. Doesn't matter. We're running it through an emulator VirtualBox. It's going to convert it, so it'll be just fine. So I like the 2.4. I'm going to select 2.4 under the 64-bit category. The other thing you can do, and I'm going to come back up here and show you something. If you start typing the word emulator in here. Oh, here, let me start over. Oh, there. If you start typing the word emulator in the window, it puts it on Linux for you. So I'm going to use the word Android though, so I'm going to go back here and select Android. I'm going to put my title back, 4.3. So you make sure this is on Linux. It's Linux. It's Android, Linux. Up here, the one right above 64-bit, 2.4. Or 2.4 64-bit, your choice. You know, actually, now that I'm looking at this, I always select 2.4. I don't select it to 64-bit. So don't select the 64-bit. Select the one right above it, 2.4. Go back and change it if you haven't. So I think both of them actually work. It's half a dozen or another. Which one's going to give you better performance? So, all right, click on continue. For the memory, this is how much RAM you're going to dedicate to this VirtualBox. You can leave it on 128. I usually boost it up to 256 or 512 because it runs faster. If you're going to do that, you're going to take away the memory from. If you're on a 2 gig system or on a 4 gig system, don't touch it, leave it on 128. If you're on an 8 gig system, boost it up, you'll get better performance. If you're going to boost it up to 256 or to 512. I'm going to put mine on 512. We move the little arrow thing that goes away because I got 8 gigs, so I can afford it. If you put it up any higher than 512, you put it on a gig, it's waste. It's a waste. Those little Android things, they don't take more than about 512. That's about it, really. So, all right, go ahead and click on continue. We're not going to use a virtual hard drive for this. Or do we want to use? You have 2 choices. If you're on a system that's got, 200 gigabytes of available space, and you want it to take space, and you want to give up a gigabyte of it, let's do it now, actually. We'll do it now. We're going to create a virtual hard drive now. If you create the virtual hard drive now, leave it on this one. Because I'm going to eventually install this, so I'm just going to go ahead and create the virtual hard drive. Click on create. We want the one that says virtual hard drive, VHD. It's the 3rd one down from the top. So you can connect this with a Parallels hard drive or with other virtual emulator hard drives. What this is going to do is it's going to take a certain percentage of your hard drive space, and it's going to allocate it, just writes a huge file, the size we're going to give it, and it allocates it towards this virtual machine, which means you can load it up and install it. We're going to install it in there in a few minutes. And you can run it just like a virtual machine, just like Parallels, just like Windows, which is actually kind of cool because then you can install your apps on there and configure it and do everything with it. You got another computer inside of your computer, essentially. And it saves data and stuff. So go ahead and press on continue. Select the 3rd one down, virtual hard drive. Press on continue. We want to do a fixed size. I like fixed size only because I don't want the thing to grow uncontrollably. I got a virus, I got something downloaded on there. It's going to take up my entire hard drive. I don't want to do that. I want control. I'm going to do fixed size. So go ahead and do fixed size. Press continue. This used to say 8 gigs. Now it says 4 gigs. 1 gig is plenty. For what you're going to do with it, I'm putting it back down to 1 gig. So I'm just going to type it here, actually. Let's see if I can go down a little bit more to 1 gig. Let's see. 1 gig is enough. So the old ones used to have 8. I'm glad they reduced it down to 4. Actually, 1 gig is kind of excessive, but it's okay. So go ahead and press on create. A little window is going to come up. It's going to reserve your 1 gig. It's going to create your hard drive for you. It's going to do this. It's going to take a few minutes longer for some of you other people who've got slower processors. Not to brag about my new processor or anything, but my system is super fast. So, you should have something that looks like this. Now, before we start, let's just check, and I'll show you a few things about this. We can run the live disk on this virtual machine. Because right now, if we start it, we're not going to get anything. Right now, if I press start right now, unless it automatically configured, which it didn't, it's going to ask me for an image. But I don't want to do it this way because I want to show you how to set it up. So I don't get anything, which is terrible. I should get something. Hold on 1 second. Let me shut this off. So go ahead and go back in and click on settings. So if you have only one item here, it should already be highlighted. Highlight Android 4.3. Click on settings. We're going to load your ISO into the disk drive. I know, which is kind of weird. So you can see through here, you can actually, and this is the other thing I like to do, I like to increase the video RAM on this. It makes the graphics look better on the virtual machine. So if you click on General, you're on the main screen. Don't mess around with this stuff here unless you're having problems. Unless your virtual machine isn't loading up correctly. Don't mess around with any of those settings. If you click on System, you can unselect floppy drive unless you have a floppy drive on your computer, which you don't have, probably. You can unselect that one. Eventually, we're going to unselect CD-ROM, but we need CD-ROM right now because we need to load up those ISO images. Leave it on the hardware clock timing. Do not enable any of the extra things unless you have to. You're going to know it when you first load it up whether you're going to have to or not. So we see you got the base memory set, processor set, acceleration set. Leave it on the defaults. If you click on the display, it's only allocating 5 megabytes. I usually put this up to about 32. 32 or 64 is good. It just adds a little bit more video memory for you. Yeah?
It's not letting me change anything. As in, like, I can see my emulator here, but when I go to settings, I cannot type.
Alright, so we're back. We just increased our video RAM. If you click on storage, so in the storage you see we have Android. If you created your virtual disk, the VHD is for virtual hard disk. You see I have my 1 gig virtual hard disk and it's fixed size storage. If you click on this one here, it looks like a CD-ROM. It says empty. This is where we're going to load the ISO. We're going to actually, okay, imagine this. You downloaded a disk. That's what the ISO is. We're going to load the ISO into your virtual CD-ROM drive. So it's really hard to see this, but leave it on IDE secondary. There's a little icon next to it, extremely small little disk. Click on this small little disk, the smallest thing you could possibly see on the screen. And then say choose a virtual CD DVD disk file. It's giving me this option because I did that a few minutes ago. I did that earlier yesterday actually with another one. But click it in here and it'll take you to the file manager. Select the ISO that you want to use. I'm going to use this one. This is my 4.3 ISO. And select open. Now you see it show up over here on the left hand side of the window.
Can you please repeat the previous?
Yep, I can. Which one is that?
Other disk. Select the
Yep.
disk.
So right here where you've got the little choose a virtual disk drive, click on the button. Click on choose a virtual CD DVD. Find the ISO that you downloaded. This is where you find it is where it's going to load it from, wherever you saved it to. That's why I say move it to some permanent storage first. If you load it from the desktop, you remove it from the desktop, you're going to break this. So move it over to files, program files, wherever it's going to be kept, and load it from there. That way you can always keep the connection. Are we good? All right, I'm going to move ahead. There's a little button underneath. It says Live CD DVD. Click the button. This is how you're setting up an emulator. Every time you load it, it's going to load this live CD and it's going to run the live CD. The live CD has two options. Well, we're going to see the boot menu in a few minutes. It has options to load it or install it. We're going to load it first and we're going to install it second. So go ahead and at this point, we're going to check a couple settings for you and we're going to set some port forwarding. So if you click on audio, everything should be set for you. If you click on network, leave it on NAT. Don't mess with your network settings. NAT's a pass-through from your host to the virtual machine. It'll automatically configure your network for you. Don't bother with that. Instead, click on the little arrow next to Advanced. Open it up. Leave this on the default settings that will look different than mine. It's going to look different. You're going to have a different adapter type. You're going to have a different MAC ID, I hope. So anyway, and the cable connected, just leave it alone. Click on where it says port forwarding, click on that button. You get a little blank screen that comes up. We're going to set port forwarding to 5555, 4 5s. Because we're going to use this as an Android emulator, we're going to register it as 5555. So to do that, click on the little plus over here. There's a little green plus. Leave, you can give it a name, you can just leave it. Where it says host port and guest port, put in 5555. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, for those of you who are having problems downloading ISO files, the file is a file. Don't double click on it, don't open it up, don't do anything with it. The file itself looks like this. If you download it correctly, the file looks like this. It looks like a file. And it has an ISO extension on it. This is what it looks like on a MacBook. It's going to look differently on yours. Don't hide the file extension, show the file extension. You see it has a .iso extension on it. It's just a file. If you double click on it, it'll open it up, it'll mount it, try to use it as a drive. You don't want that. You're going to get it locked, which is probably your problem actually. It might be locked.
It's working now.
Yeah. Don't lock it. Don't open it up. We're just going to use it.
Can we change its position, like the place where we stored it?
No. Once you download it and you move it, leave it there. You can't move it. If you move it, it's going to mess up your VirtualBox installation. So before you connect it to VirtualBox, before you run these steps, drag it over to where you want to use it and leave it there, which is probably not going to be your desktop. Okay, so now that we have the port forwarding set, let's move ahead. Go ahead and click on OK. Once you have 555 on both ends, click on OK. So now if you go back in here, you can verify it says 5555. If you want to, you can verify it. If not, you can leave it alone. So now we can just press OK on the bottom here. And we're done setting it up. So let's launch it. To launch it, you click on the Start menu. If I click on Start, or the Start icon, I should say. If I click on Start, I get this little VirtualBox Oracle thing. And I get this little boot menu. If you're on a Mac, select VESA mode. If you're on a Windows box, you might have to select Debug to make it work. Otherwise, in the old days, actually this one is only set for Versa. If the Versa mode's not working, you'll have to use one of the downgraded 2.3 or 2.2 if this doesn't work for you. The other ones have different modes. Excuse me?
Cannot access the kernel driver.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. So, to test this out, it will work on some of your computers. It will not work on some of your computers on Versa mode. If you press Versa, if you get a message up here in front that says can't access something or other driver, it means it's not compatible with either your video driver or with your video card or with any of your hardware. What you should get is something that looks like this. And then it's going to switch to Android. And then it's going to switch to a couple of questions in a few minutes.
What we need to do after selecting second option?
Oh, let me just pause this for a second. All right, let's resume. If you haven't gotten to this point, don't worry about it. I cannot solve your problem now and get us out at a decent hour. So what I'm going to have to do is troubleshoot your problems after the class. Don't worry about it. I'll leave it a little bit of time. I'm not running out of here immediately. But each one of you has a slightly different problem. If you get anything kernel related, any kernel related error messages, come back in, click on Settings. In the general category, change your kernel. So either if you have it on 2.4, put it on 2.6. Take it off of 64, put it back onto 64. It means your kernel is, it means that you need to adjust your settings. Most of you will work just fine on 2.4 non-64-bit. If you're getting no bootable medium, go to hit Storage. Click on your CD-ROM. Make sure you have a valid ISO image in there. That's the bootable medium, is the ISO image. If the ISO image is running, you're not getting a fatal error associated, but the image just doesn't load, go back down, try the Android box, the 2.3 or the 2.2 kernel. That will probably work, which means you got to go back and download another ISO file. All right, so if everything is working correctly, when you start it up, you're going to get a black little screen with the boot menu. And the boot menu, you're going to select VESA mode, V-E-S-A, however you pronounce it. You're going to get a few little lines of code up here for fast calibration that failed. See, mine failed, actually. You're going to get this little thing. You're going to get an Android words, And then eventually you're going to get stuck with a prompt. If you follow through the prompts, it'll work. You'll get to a bootable Android. However, if you guys could stop talking, other people in the back can probably hear me. If you do that, you're going to have to do it every single time. The better way is to actually install it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to install the ISO. So you only have to run through those menu items one time. Let me tell you something about the mouse, however. In the lower right-hand side, you have this thing called mouse integration mode. If it's the first time you load it up, you get these warning screens. Most people just click OK, and they go through it all. They don't read anything. When you click the mouse into the window, the mouse goes away. It's stuck inside of the window. It's in the window right now. I can't see anything because I don't have anything to click on. On the lower right-hand side, you see this little thing that says left and this command button. If I click the left command button, see how it toggles? It takes my mouse out. It's different for Windows people. You're going to have a different combo. Your combo is going to be down here. If your mouse won't go into the window, click on the mouse and disable, and it's counterintuitive, but disable the mouse integration. Disabling the mouse integration enables it, which is weird. So if you can't get your mouse into the window, disable mouse integration. If you can't get it out, make sure you get the right hotkey going on. You can change the hotkey. You can configure that inside of VirtualBox if you don't like the left shift, and left and control. All right. If you want to shut this down, you don't have to follow the prompts. Just click on the red button. I'm going to shut it down right now because I want to install it. So we created a 1 GB virtual hard disk, which means we can install this now. So go ahead and start it up, but don't select, just hit the up or the down arrows when you get to this menu. So it says run Android x86 without installation. If yours isn't working, you can try that option actually. Or go down to the bottom, select the last one. It says installation. So we have live disk mode, which I called emulation. So if I load it as an emulator as a live disk mode, I usually call it emulator. I called this one Android because I want to create this one as an installed version. So I'm going to run through the install to show you the options, and then we can answer all those questions and set it up. So if you select this item, go ahead and press enter on it. You should see a bunch of stuff come up on the screen. Just because it works in emulation mode doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be installable. So don't be alarmed if it doesn't install correctly. All right, so we can create and modify partitions. That's what we want to do. So go ahead and press enter on that. You should have a 1 GB, 1069 on mine. It shows up as free space. If you've ever installed a Linux kernel or have ever done a Linux install, it's the same kind of process. So go ahead and click on New, and then click on Primary, and set the primary for the entire space. This is our 1 GB virtual hard disk that we added to this virtual machine. And I press Enter. Make it bootable. Select Bootable. Now what we're going to do is write or quit and write, but I'm just going to write first. So if I write, it'll say, are you sure you want to write the partition table to disk? And say yes. If you just press return on it and use primary, our virtual machine is set up for Linux. This is creating a Linux 2.4 primary disk for me. I haven't loaded a file format on there. I don't need to, because the installation will do it for me. So this should tell you how similar Android is to Linux. It is Linux. So after you've written it, make sure to write it. You have to go over here and say write and say yes to save the changes. Then go to quit. And make sure up here on the flags it says boot. Boot flag is set because you selected bootable. Select bootable, write it, and then quit. Make sure it says SDA1 boot primary Linux is what we want, which whatever size you created, which is probably going to be the same as mine, 1 gig. So go ahead and quit. So I'm going to go select the item to quit. I should have something like this. Now that I have a formatted Linux drive, SDA1, it's going to ask me, well, where would I like to install the Android x86? Well, how about this one? So this is where I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. So it says select a partition to install. Go ahead and press return. The file format that works the best for me from personal experience is extended 3. You may also like extended 2. It takes up less space if you're worried about storing too many files. This is just like Linux. Extended 2 is probably a better format. Don't go the NTFS and don't go to FAT32. Don't bother. It's just too much trouble. So go ahead and select extended 3. Press OK. It says you chose to format SDA1 to extended 3. All data in that partition will be lost. Oh, bummer. Yeah?
Sorry, the previous step. Like, select a partition to install. Which one should I select?
Select the top one, SDA1. It's the only one you have. Okay. So it's going to ask me if I want to format it. Yes. So go ahead and press yes. Now it's going to ask me if I want to install the bootloader grub. I actually do. The bootloader grub is the one that, you remember that little menu that came up initially for us that gave us all those options? We can tweak this to load it, to not load it with network, to do a bunch of stuff with it if we load the network, if we load it. So go ahead and go yes. Actually, select the bootloader, because then we can tweak it and you can go online and you can find certain settings to make it run faster and stuff, depending upon how you're going to boot it. So do you want to install the system directory as read-only? Oh man, this is the root directory. Making the system to be read-only is faster for debugging, but it needs to have more disk space and longer installation time. Don't worry about the installation time, it doesn't really matter. You want it read-only. This way we can open and we can close our emulator by just not following through the safe, options to opening. We can just slam it down, just shut it off, shut it on. We don't have to worry, it's read-only. Nothing's ever going to get corrupted on us. So go ahead and select yes, we want it read-only. That way we can, not have to worry about opening and closing it safely. And this thing crashes all the time, just let it crash. So, and I mean, how much time is it really taking here? It's not really taking that much more time. So hopefully you have something like this, or similar to this. And it got real quiet. I guess people are like, oh. You might have to install the 2.3 version. I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. So. Yeah. All right, so now it says it's installed completely. Do we want to run it or we want to reboot? Let's reboot because we want to test the install. But here's the problem. When we reboot it, we still have that live CD loaded. So it's half a dozen or another. I'm going to go ahead and run it just to make sure it works, actually. Because if I run it, I might actually get the live CD actually loading up. Let's see what happens. Oh, I got rid of that message on the top because now the kernel is no longer looking for that thing that wasn't there before on the ISO disk. And actually, when you install it, it actually uses your hardware and uses your component, so it actually runs better this way. So what I want to see eventually is going to be like this little thing that comes up. It gives me some menu options. I'm going to shut it down right now, though, because I want to make sure I'm not loading from the CD-ROM anymore. So I'm going to click the little red button up here. Because we made this read-only, it's safe. We're not going to destroy it. So I'm going to go ahead and power off the machine. Press OK. I'm going to go back up into Settings. I'm taking the CD-ROM drive out. I could take the CD-ROM drive out, or I could just change the boot order. I'm going to change the boot order, just in case I want to reinstall in the future, or load from that disk. So if I come into System, see where it says boot order, just deselect the CD-ROM. Now it's going to boot from your hard drive. Easy way to fix that problem. Otherwise, every time you load it up, you're not using your hard disk, you're using your CD-ROM. So now I can safely press OK. I'm going to start it back up again. This time I know it's loading from my hard disk. And it's going to show me my little boot menu. And my boot menu looks like I got test debug. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave it on test now. I'm not going to have any more messages about different different screen sizes or anything like that, or different resolutions, because it's already set for my resolution. So now, you may not have noticed, but it is running a little bit faster, actually, at this point. So you might notice it running a bit faster. And if it's not running as fast as you'd like, allocate some more RAM to it. What we're going to do in a few minutes, I'm going to actually let this one load up. We're going to run through the settings, which is going to be pretty easy. Did you have a question?
So here what you did, like you in system you changed the boot order.
Yes, I took away the CD-ROM drive so it would boot to the hard disk.
There is one floppy option as well.
Yeah, take away the floppy as well.
Okay, just CD-ROM.
Yes. No, just hard drive. If you installed it on the hard drive, you just need the hard drive selected. So now it looks like my Android is upgrading. It's automatically updating and upgrading and doing whatever it needs to do. Because I have internet access. If you don't have internet access, it's not going to say that. I don't even know where to start with the questions. I'm going to rip through this. If you have an individual question, just please hold it till the end. Yes?
2.3 also it is giving the same error.
You may not be able to use that computer. You might be stuck with the Android emulators, if that's the case. Actually, this is perfect timing for the attendance, because now I can help some people. I see Joel at the door. So when your emulator loads up, leave it up. I'm going to run through the small little configuration and show you a couple things about it in a few minutes. So if it's loaded up, if it's not loaded up yet, load it up. Let it load up. And I think we're going to do attendance right now. So I'm going to pause this. All right, so for those of you who are still having problems, hold off till the very, very, very end, and I'll catch you all up. So you should have a screen that looks like this. If you click your mouse into the screen, your mouse is stuck into the screen. It's called integration mode. So what ends up happening is that in the lower right-hand side of the screen, you can't see it because my mouse can't get out. But if I toggle right now, you see something moving on the lower right-hand side of the screen here. I'm toggling on a MacBook. It's the shift and then the left control. Takes my mouse outside of the window. Oh, now my mouse is outside of the window. I'm looking down here. If you're not seeing this toggle on your system when you're clicking it, it means you're not clicking the right combination. On a Windows machine I was just at a few minutes ago, it was on the right-hand side. It was the right control and the shift on the right-hand side. Both options are on the same side of the keyboard, on the right side or the left side. And it's two keys you're pressing together. One of them's the shift. So on a Windows machine, it's probably going to be the right control plus the right shift. On the Mac, it's the opposite. It's the left. It's not the control, it's the command. Left command and left shift. That's how you're going to get the mouse out of the screen. So I'm going to click it back in because I want to be in here. I'm going to quickly run through the install here. I'm going to start. I press start. I get the welcome. It says just a second. It's going to run me through. I'm not going to set up a Google account. I'm just going to set it up. And then hopefully this will work. So you can actually see what the end result is, just in case you can't see it on your computer. Did yours work? Okay, good. Oh, it's still loading? Okay.
Well, it's installing.
Oh, okay.
There's no progress bar.
No, there's no progress bar. It just looks like this. It says just wait a sec. So you can actually set this up with you can actually set it with Google Gmail and everything too. So it actually works like a regular VirtualBox.
So is this emulator free from like a Galaxy Note threads or? Okay.
Yeah, so each one of the emulators has a slightly different interface to it. It's so loud in here.
You get that little whistle. Yeah.
Yes? It takes some time, actually. So anyway, I'm back here. It says select a Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and skip through this. You're using a pass-through mode. Your Wi-Fi is already set up for you. Don't set up your Wi-Fi. Just press on skip. And then it says skip anyway. So warning, you may incur some carrier charges. I don't care. Skip anyway. If I skip anyway, it should take me up to here. It says got Google. No, I don't want to put my Google on here. So I'm going to go ahead and select no on here too. If I can get my mouse to come up here. There we go. And now I'm going to say not now. I don't want to make it Google. I don't want to keep everything safe and upload stuff. And I don't want to have it use my location, but I'm just gonna press the arrow to the right anyway. It's just okay. So I'm gonna click the arrow to the right, get through this last little bit. Tablet belongs to, I don't really care. I'm gonna click the arrow to the right, as it belongs to first name and last name. You can set the information if you want. Google services, do you agree? Yes, I do. Click the arrow to the right. And then now click on the finished. If we get to the finish, that's the only time you ever have to go through that. And then press on OK, and then you get to the Google screen. You should have this little green screen that comes up. If you've done that, you have it installed correctly. So the next time you load this up, you're not going to get prompted with all that stuff if you're doing it from a hard disk, and if you're loading it from the hard disk. So right now, if I exit it out here, and I power off the machine, and I start it back up again, I'm going to end up with that green screen coming up without all those prompts. If I'm getting all those prompts, I'm probably loading the CD-ROM drive, and I'm not loading the hard drive, because I've installed it on the hard drive, on my 1 GB hard drive. So while this is loading up, I'm going to show you one more time for those people who are using the 2.3. The screen's a little bit different, and I want to show you some particulars about that. Then we'll get into the script that you're going to need to write down. So if you want to do this one more time, and if you've downloaded the 2.3, real quickly, I'm going to go new. I'm going to load up this one. I'm just going to run this one as an emulator. I'm not going to install it. You don't need to install the 2.3. The 2.3 you do not need to install. So now, see, the second time I brought it up, it looks like this. If I want to unlock it, whoops, I have to unlock it quickly, otherwise my screen goes away. So, anyway, let me shut this one down. So don't bother hooking it up. You don't need to. If you want to install it, you can, but you don't need to. This one runs better. So this is what you're going to get. If I type in emulator, I'm going to type in 2.3. And I'm going to select Linux, and I'm going to put it on 2.4. And I'm going to press continue. I'm going to load up my memory. I'm going to put it on 512, just as before. I'm going to click on continue. This is when you say do not add a virtual hard disk. So I'm not going to waste any of my hard disk space. If you did this for the 4.3 and then decided you're going to use the 2.3, all you have to do is delete it and say delete everything. And it will delete the 1 GB that you reserved. If you want to get rid of it, then you have to come back out here, click on it, delete it, and delete the gigabyte drive that came with it. And you can get rid of it. So if I click do not add a virtual drive, click on create. It's going to give me a little warning that I have an emulator without a virtual drive. I'm doing the same thing as before. I'm going to go into settings, and I'm going to click on system, unselect floppy, unselect hard drive, just leave it on CD-ROM. This is going to be a virtual CD-ROM disk, and I'm going to load up. Click on the CD-ROM storage, click on the empty hard drive, add the 2.3 image that's in there by choosing the disk on my hard disk space, which is right here. Select open. It's a live CD. This time I'm going to leave it on live CD because I want to run it as a live CD. Select OK. Start up the new emulator, and it's going to look a little bit different. You're going to have more screen options. Oh, you don't have any more screen options. Yes, you do. Run Android x86 without installation HDPI or MDPI. If you're on a HP machines and IBM machines, I think pads, they all use the HDPI. I don't know what Lenovo's uses. Did you guys run it on the HDPI or did you run it on the Versa? Versa, whatever mode this is. I don't know how you pronounce that. Try that mode. If the other ones give you problems, try some of the other modes. This one's going to load up pretty nifty. It's going to look very similar. The reason why I like this one is it loads up faster normally. And I can run this as a live CD. There's no setup. No setup at all. In fact, you probably could notice right now it's running a little bit faster. Much faster than the other one does. In a few minutes you're going to see it load up, and then you're going to see this little thing I want to point out too, actually. You can have more than one of the same emulator. See how fast it loaded up? Pretty quick. So it's also going to load up this thing that pushes up there. There's this little button right here. This is an add-on piece that is here to emulate. It drags down. You can drag it down a little bit. If you click on it, it emulates the or represents the right button on the phone. So it's a piece of hardware, but there's no screen on here. I mean, there's no way of putting it on here. So this is going to show you like the menu button. You can click on here and go menu. Oops, my mouse is kind of funny here. Oops. My mouse is not having a good time in here. There we go. Anyway, let me get out of here. All right, so we have one more setting to do. Whoops, there we go. I can leave, actually I'll just leave this one up. We have one more setting we can do, or we need to do. So out on the website, there's another file, it's called AVD. Here, let me bring it up for you again. So it's this one here, it says AVD with VirtualBox script. So the reason why we're doing this is so we can connect Eclipse to the Android emulators so that we can use those instead. So what we need to do is every time that you reboot your computer, you need to run this script. Call it a script. The script looks like this on a Mac. So on a Mac, I put my Android in Applications Android. So out here, if I go into Applications, I have a folder called Android right here. Inside Android, I have an SDK folder. And then I have Platform Tools inside of the folder. And inside of Platform Tools, I have ADB. So the command you're really running is ADB space connect space localhost : 5555. Remember we put the port forwarding on the emulator. We forward it to 5555. So if I were, and I put this in my root directory, and on a Mac I just simply open up the terminal window and I just type in emulator, which is the name of the file that I created. It runs a little daemon and it starts it and it says unable to connect, probably because it's not loaded, because the emulator I just created a few minutes ago, I never put the port forwarding on it. So I'm going to fix the problem. So I'm going to go back into my emulator here. If you get something that looks like this, unable to connect, given that you've typed that incorrectly, I guess the first error you're looking for is this one. What's this going to say? I was unable to connect. If you're on a Windows machine, you're going to type in C:\/ my program files / Android / SDK / these are forward slashes, by the way. You're typing in backslashes on Windows. This is more Linux-like because it's on a Mac. And you're going to find the directory Platform Tools, and you're going to run ADB space connect space localhost : 5555. If you get this error message, it means you don't have your port forwarding set. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into VirtualBox. And I've got the emulator running. So I'm going to hit Settings, and then I'm going to hit Network, and click on Port Forwarding, and lo and behold, it's not being forwarded, which is why I get that message. So if I add the little plus thing, I put it on my other one, but I didn't put it on this one. Put 5555 in here. Run this one again. Now it's connected. So if it's unable to connect, first thing you want to do is make sure you got it running. If it's running, great. If it's not running, if it's running, but you're still getting unable to connect, make sure then that you've got the port forwarding set. So click on the networking, click on port forwarding, and make sure you got 5555 put in for both. Same thing for Windows, exactly the same process, except for your script, and I call this a script. Okay, so what did I do? I put this in a text file. I put this command in a text file, and out here I'm doing this to run it from a Mac. So you can put it in a BAT file, you can put it for Windows, you can put it in anything you want. You could type it in manually if you wanted to every time. But you have to figure you're going to do this every time you load up the computer. Every time you reboot the computer, you have to do this. So I put it in like a little file, and then I just run it like this. If it's already running, I ran it again, it says already connected. So how do you make this for Linux, Unix people? How do you make this executable to do this? You go change mod. change mod, just go 777, and then the name of the file, emulator. And it'll change it to make it executable for you, public, available, ready to go. So, or if you're on a Linux machine, it's the same process actually. So, and then I can just run it, and it runs. If you don't do that, this is the connection between Eclipse and the Android emulators. If you don't do that, it's not going to be connected. So now I can load up Eclipse. And where's my Eclipse? Here it is. I can load up Eclipse. And I have a sample project in there that we ran last time, actually. We loaded up Hello World. The only reason why we're doing the VirtualBox stuff is so that we can use this instead of the built-in emulators. If you can't get this to work, you can always use the built-in emulators. Not that big of a deal. So I'm loading up Eclipse now because I want to see it run in the emulator. And I got this Hello World project over here. I have the emulator running. I run my little script. It was connected. I'm going to right mouse click over here. And I'm going to say run as Android application. It's going to launch it out. It's going to compile it first, actually. It's going to launch it out. And it's going to pull up this little window that says Android Device Chooser. And see where it says 2.3.7? That's the emulator that I have out there. If I look up here, it says it's on localhost 5555. So it tells me where it is in the window. That's the port that it's connecting to it on. So if I say OK to this, lo and behold, it's loading it now in my emulator. I can put all my emulators on 5555, put up a dozen of them, load up whichever one I want to use, run the script, it works on all of them. Run the script, launch my project, it loads up in the emulator, which gives us the connection. Did anyone get this far? Yeah? Okay, hold on. Okay, good time for a pause. Alright, so when going around the room, I see some common problems. When the screen comes up and it says that it's connected and can't find 5554, it means you're not loading the right emulator, or the emulator is not loaded. You have to have the loaded up emulator, and it has to be having the port forwarding to 5555 in order for it to actually be showing up in the window as that. If it says 5554, it has a big old question mark. It meant somewhere along the lines, a couple weeks ago, probably last week, you loaded up the 5554 emulator, and it's not being loaded anymore. It's not loaded right now, which is why it's going to give you that error message. So unfortunately, if you still have problems, haven't gotten it connected, hang out a little bit after class. I'm going to move forward. Hang out after class. We're going to start Hello World. And we're going to get something running. I've had a couple people who showed me screens and they said, well, it's not working. I said, well, because you're loading up a Java project, not an Android project. So we're just going to start from scratch now and build an Android project. If you've had problems, you don't have things working, then what's going to end up happening is that's your homework. You have to fix it for next week. So. Alright, so I have a project in here, but I'm going to delete it. I'm going to remove it because I don't want it. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out of here. I'm going to take it out by clicking on the Delete Project Contents from Disk. So it takes it out of my workspace as well. So I don't have to worry about it. So what we're going to do first, and we're going to start it today and we're going to finish it next time, is that we're going to run from the bhacker.com website. It's the first tutorial. And it's going to be under Android Phone Application Development Tutorials. Right here we got Hello World Tutorial with Hello World Solution. Some people like to look at this solution. It's a completely working project. We're going to build it from scratch. If you can't get it to work, look at the solution. Maybe that might solve your problems. Who knows? Otherwise, we're building this by following through this step. We started a little bit of this last time, but I noticed a lot of people weren't here actually. So we're going to start it from scratch. It's a PDF file. And I'm just going to leave whatever I have loaded up, because I can run it from here. Hello, here we go. So let's go ahead and we'll start the tutorial. We'll probably get about halfway through it. If you want to, you can actually finish this on your own between now and next time, then you'll be that much farther ahead. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to fix all of the problems that you're having in between the class meetings. Because if you wait, like some people waited, they're still having problems installing the Android SDK. And I'm thinking, why did you wait this long? It's just another week that you're going to be behind. So unfortunately, this is gonna give you an opportunity to improve your troubleshooting skills. And hopefully by the third week, everybody will have their development environment installed. But we'll take it from there, because we really want to do some Android development. So let's start a new project. So open up your Eclipse if it's not opened up already. And then some people went wrong with this step already, so let's follow through a little bit slower. Select File, New. If you don't see Android Project up here, if you select Java Project, it will not run on the Android emulators. 2 people today showed me Java projects. Not gonna run. Don't show me Java projects. So, Android application project. If it doesn't show up here, you can select Other. If you select Other, if you don't show up there, you'll have another screen that comes up. You can click on Android, and what you're selecting is Android application project. If you get this far, you're off to a good start. So I'm going to call this one a first tutorial. This way I can get, I can remember which one this is between class meetings and stuff. So I'm going to call it first tutorial. And I'm going to leave it on a 2.2. This is one of the reasons why I made the ISO 2.2 available. It's the lowest level for the current API that's compatible, that's kind of for testing purposes. You can leave it on the Jelly Bean. If you have the 4.3 installed, that's fine. You leave it on there. Go ahead and click Next. Go ahead and click Next again. Go ahead and click Next again. We're going to use a blank activity. I'm going to talk about the activities in a few minutes. Go ahead and click Next again. We're basically going to keep all the default settings. We're going to call the blank activity main activity. So leave it alone on its default settings and go ahead and click on Finish. If you click on Finish, in the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see your project folder. And in your project folder, you might have some little red things. Wait a few minutes. If you have a slow processor, the little red things will go away. It needs to save some temporary files, and it needs to configure your system. You'll get something that looks like this, a little project tree. It automatically brings up the GUI interface. We're not really going to worry about the GUI interface at this point. However, just to show you a little bit, before we build a hello world, I'll just kind of show you how much fun this is. I can press the plus, make the screen a little bit bigger, so I can see what's on here. And then I can drag and drop stuff and stick it on here. For example, if I want, let's look at, these are form widgets. I hear about large text. We'll put some large text here. And then I'm going to put on here, I double clicked on that and it takes me to the XML interface for it. I'm going to change the text on here. Instead of it being large text, I'm going to say my first program. And if you get to this screen and you're wondering how do I get back, there's a tab on the bottom. You can tab back to the graphical view. I tab back to the graphical view. I see my first program written on here. So what you can do between now and next week, I'm giving you your homework assignment as well. The only way to learn this interface is to play with it. Drag and drop a bunch of stuff and put it on here. Change the properties around. Play around with it. Have some fun with it. We're going to be doing stuff throughout the class, but the more you're not afraid of touching and moving things around, the better. So populate the screen. You can put like, you know, here's a progress bar. I'll put a progress bar on here. And, you know, here's a, oh, I don't know. Let's go into layout. So drag a grid view layout, stick it on here. You know. Actually, I don't want to install that, so I'm going to go cancel. And then once you're done, you can't go wrong by putting stuff on here. You can change properties around. You can actually build a couple of different interfaces if you want. And then as an example here, now I have this red stuff that happens, which I'm showing you what happens with an error message. So you might see, it's hard to see on this printout, on the screen, but you see this little red box right here? And then over here you see some red boxes next to the items. That means there's an error. I introduced an error. It will not compile with these errors. I put a grid view on here without installing it. So I'm actually going to remove it. I'm going to delete this grid view, and you'll see when I delete it, the errors have gone away. And then when I run this project, I can simply right mouse click, go run as, and just run it, and then it should run. So I'm going to have a little prompt to save it. And I still have my emulator out here, so.
How can I get the setting into that tab to see the package explorer?
Oh, hold on a second. How do you get to the settings to see the package explorer?
I have just a palette, but I don't have the package explorer tab.
Oh, hold on one second. Let me show you.
Sorry.
Alright, so if I run it, it's not going to have very much functionality to it, but I should at least see it run. And here it is here. I've got my first program with my progress indicator going around in a circle. Beautiful job. Let's make some now. You're taking a class in this, so let's do something where we can actually make something functional. So let's build a screen, and the first version that we're going to build of this Hello World program uses two activities with two screens. One screen is going to take in a name. We're going to pass the name to the second screen, and we're going to show it to the user. So it's kind of an easy kind of way to get familiar with the interface. So we've built our generic project, and we took a tour through. And this is tutorial 1, by the way. So part of your homework is to read this in a little bit more detail as well, because I'm not going to read this to you. It will explain, so tutorial 1 will explain all of the different parts of what is main activity.java, what is the resource folder, what is drawable, layouts, values, generate, all this stuff in here. It's about 5 pages of reading. So go ahead and read through it. What we're going to do is run it in the emulator, make sure it works, set up your ADV, make sure it works. We're going to start in with a simple activity class. We're going to create a new activity class, and this activity class is going to be called the name getter. So we're going to create a new user interface. We could do it 2 ways. We could create the interface, then create the Java class, and then connect them together, or we can create the Java class, click a little button that says give me an interface too, and have them both populate for us together. So if you select File, New, Other, and you can expand out the Android folder like I showed you before, you can select Android XML layout file and then click on Next, and then you'd have a new layout. And the layout we're going to have, and I'm previewing the instructions for us here, is we're going to call it name getter, because this is the layout that's going to be creating our interface to get the user's name. So I'm going to go into Android, and in my source directory here, I have main activity.java, which is going to be the main activity class. So if I come over here and I go File, New, and I come down to Other, because if I come up here and I can go, well, I'm not going to create another Android application project. I want to add some stuff to this current project because I want to add another activity. So I'm going to go Other. If I say XML layout file, then I'm going to get another layout file. This uses what's called a model view controller, which not a strict enforcement like there is in iOS. This is going to use a view, which is going to be our XML interface. The model, that's our data model. Our controller is going to be like the main activity.java, but we're going to have one that's called namegetter.java, and we're going to connect them together. And we're going to do it manually right now instead of doing it the automated way, so you can sort of see how those pieces work together. Just know that there's a little bit of a more automated way of doing this, but let's just make it in pieces, which is because this is a learning activity. So Android XML layout file. So Android, if you do not have a computer with you and you're not following along with this, this is why I'm showing you the instructions in here. It will show you exactly what to do. You want Android XML layout file, and then select Next. And we need to say linear layout. So the layouts are kind of an interesting. It's a way of auto-formatting the interface. Linear gives us sort of a line by line. It's kind of like a Word file, actually. Line by line wraparound of information. Just because we create a linear layout using this wizard, essentially, doesn't mean we're stuck with this. We can always change the layout. In fact, we're probably going to change the layout. We'll probably make it a relative layout. But just go ahead and select linear layout and give it a name. And the instructions want us to call it name getter. So name underscore getter. And I'm going to copy this out of here and paste it into here because I'm terrible at typing. I'm not putting .xml or anything. I'm just giving it a name. It will automatically put the .xml extension on there for me. So make sure linear layout selected. The file name is going to be called name getter. Click on finish. And I come up here and I see namegetter.xml, and I see this nice little interface file. And I come over here and I go, well, there's nothing over here in the source. Nope, because we didn't create the controller, we just created the view. Because we're going to do all three parts. Well, we're only going to create two of the parts, but we're going to do them separately. So if you're in the iOS class, you kind of know what I'm talking about. If not, just follow along with the logic for a few minutes and the pieces will eventually come together. If I click on the RES folder to make that one bigger, and I come down to the layouts folder, I see now I have two layouts. This is where it was actually located. So Android will actually put this in the proper folder for you automatically depending upon what it is. We just created a layout, so it's in the layout folder here. Alright, so that looks good. So now we're going to open it up in the Layout Editor tab. Select a tab labeled namegetter.xml, switch it over to the XML file, and take a look to see what we have. So let's go over here and take a look. So if I click on namegetter.xml on the bottom, I see I don't have anything. I have a starting and an opening and a closing XML tag called linear layout, which is actually kind of interesting. It looks like HTML. So those people who don't like XML are saying, oh, I don't know anything about XML, you know it. If you've done any HTML, you know XML. It's very similar. It's opening and closing tags. But instead of putting text in here, we're putting data. And we've defined properties for data. And so we have layout width, layout height, orientation. You can't see it on my screen, which is why if you bring a computer, next time you can see it on your own screen. It makes a little bit more sense to you. But anyway, we don't have very much stuff there, so what we're going to do is add some items to it. And we're going to open up the item category labeled Form Widget. We're going to drag over a text view, put it on the canvas, and then we're going to drag over a button, it looks like, and a label. So this is going to be called Name Getter, so I'm going to click back over to the graphical layout and do things graphically. In the future, we might just add some XML code. So we want to learn a little bit of XML in this class. So I'm already on a form widget. So if I put in, let's say some medium text. If I drag some medium text over and I stick it right here, I can see on the right-hand side over here, I can actually change the text by clicking right here where it says text and change the property of the text. So I'm going to put in here, enter your name. Enter your name. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can kind of sort of see it. So one of the pros and cons is that, well, the pro is you get many different ways of doing this. One of the cons is it's very hard to get, and what ends up happening is people will slip into something and they'll just do it one way and not use all the other ways. This is very unnatural for me. I don't like using this window because the window never existed. Instead, I'm more of a drag it on here, then click on the XML and then type it in. So I like the XML interface better, but it's all up to you. And you might see there's this little thing here that says you hard-coded a string. Yeah, we have string XML, which gives us pre-configured strings where I could just put my label 1, my label 2, my label 3, and then put the code in there that says enter in your name, enter in your phone number, and stuff like that. If we do that, then we can take advantage of things like localization, where if the user sets the language on their phone to a different language, all the strings can be loaded from French.xml or Spanish.xml, and we don't have to go through and change all the text. So I'm not showing you the way you would do it in the future, but just know that you can have a simple text label without actually having to create a string. We'll have a project that creates strings once we get started in this, and you'll see how that works. All right, so I dragged the text view over, and I pre-populated the label. Might look strange. So we need an input box. And we need a button. So we're going to have a button that says enter. We're going to repeat the steps for a text field, a text view, which was the label. We have a text field where we're going to add the person's name in there, and a button. So go ahead and I'm going to flip it back to my graphical view. Now that was a text view that I put in there. Now I need a text field. So I'm going to click on text field, and I'm going to put in a plain text, little plain text box. If you put in a password box, it'll put password in there. We have date formatted ones and names. So I'm just going to use plain text. If I put plain text in there, I get a little box here where I can write text in. I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm not going to change anything with it. And instead, now I'm going to go to the buttons. So if I click back up here, where are my buttons? They're going to be in form widgets, button. Here's a button right here. I got a small button and I got an OK button. I'm just going to put the button on here. It's going to be a big button. And again, I can change the label on the button by coming over here and changing the text. I'm going to say this is going to be OK. So put a text view, an edit text, or whatever they call it, text field, and put a button on there. And the linear layout's fine because it's going to put it all in a straight line for us. So now we have a pretty nice looking user interface that we're going to use. And so now I'm going to come back up here and see what's next. Edit the text. We could add a little thing called a hint in here, which is what this is going to do. We can also change the IDs. So as an example, if I click on the XML interface, I see that this one's called text view 1, this one's called edit text 1, and this is called button 1. Actually, for purposes of remembering what these names are, I'm going to leave them alone. But we could change the names if we wanted to. And it makes, because in the code, in the Java code, we're going to refer to these items. Because we're going to get the text from here, we're going to put it over to there, stuff like that. So, all right, so let's see, we're not going to edit these, but you can go through and you can kind of see how you can modify this a little bit more if you want. Add a hint. We added a hint. This is the information that gets shown when a person hovers their mouse over or puts their finger next to the edit text. You can put a little hint up that says, hey, enter your name. Or we can actually put that in the box if we wanted to. So we can modify it a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is create the controller that goes along with this view. It's going to be a class file. It's going to be of the type activity. So we're going to create a new class that extends the Android activity class and implements the Android view on-click listener interface. Because what we're going to do now is we have a button. We're going to put in a button listener. So on the button click, something happens. And we're going to sort of do this the manual way so you can sort of see how it looks. So we're going to implement the on-click listener interface, and we're going to create a method stub that's used for a public void on-click method. Some of this will be created for us automatically using the GUI, but we'll see how it's done in a few minutes. So we're going to select File, New, Other. This time we're going to select Android Activity. So go back to Eclipse. You can actually shut the name getter now. We're done with the name getter. Just save it if you're going to shut it. I like to clear these windows out so I don't accidentally type into the wrong window, which could be a problem. So I'm going to click on a source, and I'm going to go File, because I want it to, actually I'm clicking on the package name. The package I have in here is called com.example.firsttutorial, which was the default package that was created for me. So I'm going to go File, New, and now I'm going to go back down to Other. And so now I'm going to select the top one. It says Android Activity. So activities are one form of app that works. We have like 5 different forms. Next week I'm going to give you a little bit of lecture material that goes through the different types of activities so you know the differences. What we're going to do is create an Android activity. So click on Next. And it's still going to be another blank activity. So click on, let's just make sure we're going to do blank. Yeah, blank activity. And let's see. Go ahead and click on Next. And then we're going to give this a name, and then we're gonna, what are we going to call it? Get name. So capital GETNAME. Let me tell you something about the file. If I call the activity get name, it's going to make a file called getname.java for me. And the G is always capitalized in the beginning. So Java class files, and this goes for regular core Java as well. The name of the class that's defined inside of the file is the name of the file, should be the name of the file. And it should always start out with a capital letter to indicate that it is an object type, which all classes are objects. So if I try to put in a lowercase g, it may take it, might be just fine, might not hold true. But if you're going to do core Java, you're really going to program in Java, you're going to use a capital G. So you don't really need to know anything about Java at this point, but you're going to learn it through osmosis. So go ahead and click on Finish. And when we click on Finish, lo and behold, up here we have the get name up here. And you can see what happened here, the automated way of doing something. Now we have an activity underscore get underscore name XML. And remember before I was telling you there's a couple of different ways of doing this. We can create the XML, which is what we did, and then we can create the activity, and then we can tell the activity to work with the XML. Or if we create the activity, we get an XML. So that's the cheat sheet method, is you start with the activity first, you create the activity, then you look at this, we got this XML file. So now we really have an extra XML file. I'm going to leave it alone. But we could have just started with the class. But if I had done that, you wouldn't have known that you can actually create an extra interface file if you wanted to. So there's a different school of thought on that. I can have like 5 different interfaces for my application and just pick one to use. I'm not stuck with some people who learn it this way, just create the class and then get the interface. I don't think that they can actually create another interface. They just use whatever they get. No, don't think out of the box a little bit. They're separate. They're completely separate and controllable. All right, so in here, we get something that looks like this. We have an opening and closing, and let me explain Java to you for a second, because I'm assuming that nobody has any programming background in this class. Some people have never worked with computers. I sense that after today. That was a joke. It was a bad joke. Okay. So what do we have? We have, for Java, we have a package. A package is sort of like an include for C++. It's not, we don't have includes, but we have imports for C++. But a package isn't really the equivalent to the include, it's really the import. This is more the environment. So it's an extra thing that doesn't exist in other programming languages, but it just tells us that all this stuff is going to belong to this package. Think of it like a directory structure. We created one by default. This is our package. So everything we're putting inside of the package. And it's just a placeholder. Over here you notice there's an opening and closing little thing I just toggled. By default it's shut because we don't want to look at all these includes or these imports. We can actually use the word include, but the proper syntax is import. And here we're going to import android.os.bundle and android.app.activity. Well, this is the default stuff we get. So remember we have model view controller. This is the controller. We're going to attach it to a view, and the data model is the bundle. So it's different implementation than we get in iOS, but it's similar. I think it's a little hokey, actually. But we do have the 3 components. They're just not all visibly connected like they are in iOS. This is all in separate pieces. But it's all put together by the activity class. So anyway. For those people who don't know Java, this is going to look like Greek. For those people who do know Java, you're a step ahead of the game. We're creating a class. A class is the implementation of an object. All objects in object orientation get instantiated at runtime. We automatically get an object here. And the object is going to be called getName. Extends means it's in a hierarchical fashion, so it extends activity. For those people who do not know Java, have absolutely no background on Java at all, and are brand new from, what was it we heard earlier, electrical Electrical engineering. Here's more homework for you to do. Go on the internet. It's like for $3 or $4 you can pick up. And if someone reminds me, I have an extra copy of this book that I can loan out from Deitel and Deitel. So it's Deitel and Deitel. They're a father and son combination. They make the best books. They're cheap. They're out in abundance. You don't have to have the 9th edition. This is the current one though. It says How to Program in Java. It's a very good self-learning book. You don't necessarily have to learn that much, but if you can get through the first couple of chapters of this book, or any similar book, or go online and look at a Java tutorial. There's a little bit of self-study involved in this because you'll have to take the initiative to. If you can get familiar with the terminology and the basic syntax, you'll have a much easier time with Android. So I teach an entire course called Java Programming, and it's part of the Mobile App Certificate program. It's usually the class you take before this one, but there's no prerequisite. Some people haven't taken that class yet. If you haven't taken the class, this is the book I highly recommend. Amazon.com, you can buy the older versions of Java. It hasn't changed. The stuff that you're going to be doing with it, it hasn't changed enough. Make sure you get like from Java 2.0, Java 2, JDK 2 and above. So something of the last 5 years would work. The last time I looked, I had students downloading this for like $3 or $4 off of Amazon. The older versions of the book are cheap, no excuse. You can also find it in PDF form online all over the place. So, Deitel and Deitel, How to Program in Java. And then this won't look as Greek to you, but this isn't too bad. This is inheritance actually, but I'm giving you inheritance on day 1 here, which is kind of, if you don't know Java and you're looking at inheritance, it's gonna read like Greek to you. But extends is inheritance. Extends from the object type activity. Activity is kind of like main for C++ people. It's the main driver program. Activity is a functionality. So when your app starts, it's going to perform this activity. And we have 2 activities running. We have main activity. Now we have namegetter activity. So we're going to need to tell the manifest which activity to run first. We're going to need to switch it, actually, because right now the main activity is running, which is what we're going to do in part of this project. So, all right, so we have a couple methods that are built in for us, and it's actually kind of interesting. If you highlight the classes like I've done here, you can't see it on your screen. You can't see it on the screen, but you can see it on your screen. If I highlight it, you see this onCreate and this onCreate options menu is both highlighted. We don't actually need this one. We're not going to use it for anything, but we are going to use this one. This is the onCreate. So we have the life, and next week I'm going to give you the life cycle of the app, and this will make more sense to you. But the first thing that happens from on start onCreate, we have an onCreation of the object. So the onCreation of the object, it's going to load. What's it going to load? Well, it's going to load a layout file. It's going to capture the current instance state, send it back to super, and if you don't know Java, that's not going to make any sense to you. But send it back to the object that we started from, which was activity, so we can get the current state of the activity. And then we're going to set the context view to r.layout.activityGetName. Well, that's interesting. If I come down here to R, and here's R, which is resource. R stands for resource. So you're looking at this going, well, this is all XML. How does this thing work? Well, if we click and open up this thing called GEN, Generated Java Files, and we open up the package com.example.firsttutorial, then we see r.java. Never, ever, 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 never, ever touch this file or edit it. Don't ever open up this folder again. Seriously. You'll go online, you'll see people saying, oh, edit the r.java. No, don't ever edit the r.java file. It's automatically generated. Even if I were to edit it, 2 seconds from now, the changes would go away and come back to regular. It's automatically generated for us. What is it? It's this entire resource folder converted to Java. This resource folder is an XML in the background, while I'm talking, the Eclipse file, the Eclipse engine is converting it and keeping r.java up to date for me. Change it, 2 seconds later, it's going to be changed back. It's never going to work. So don't ever try doing it. There's a bunch of idiots on the internet, and those are the people who love to post the most. And it even says on the top, auto-generated file, do not modify. So don't ever edit this file. I can't say that enough. So this file is R because it's the resource folder. So in the resource folder, I'm going to close this now because we don't need to see this anymore. We have a layout subdirectory. In the layout folder, well, we're going to make our first change here. We're not going to use this activity get name underscore XML because that's the one that was created for us automatically. So I'm going to take this out. So if I take it out, I see my first little problematic thing where I have this little, this little squiggly line. Can you see the squiggly line? Yes, you can. So let me type in something wrong so I can see the squiggly line. If I put my mouse over, it gives me some helpful hints in terms of what I want to do. So I can put a little thing over here. I can create the field. I can create the constant. None of these actually work. And that's one of the biggest complaints of students. Like they start selecting this stuff. Half the time it's wrong unless you know what you're doing. But sometimes once you get to know what you're doing, then it does actually make more sense. So I'm going to change this to the file we just created, which was called nameGetter. So if we change it to nameGetter, and nameGetter is actually down here, it should turn into this blue squiggly kind of italics kind of font. And we found it. So now when this activity loads, it's going to use the nameGetter. So if I come back up here and I look at main activity is using activity main. That's this one here. So I could, if I wanted to, and let me just do it actually, I can just delete this activity nameGetter. So it says, are you sure you want to delete it? Yeah, sure, why not? Get rid of it. It's not going to do any harm. Just got rid of it. It was given to me automatically. I didn't use it. But that's all you get when when I created this nameGetter. And I'm going to say, what is the problem now? nameGetter. I'm going to put my mouse over here. I'm going to say, activity get name cannot be resolved to a field. I know because I removed it completely. So all I really have to do is save this here. And if I save it, the error goes away. Another complaint about this environment. It doesn't refresh as fast as I'd like it to. Because I didn't save it, it still thought I was using name underscore, or whatever that was called, activity underscore name underscore getter. So it gave me all this garbage when I deleted it, when I knew it was okay to delete it because I wasn't using it, but I didn't save the file. So that's one of the things you'll run into. If you do run into that problem and get a bunch of error messages, just start saving things. You just stay saying, or if you get a lot of errors and it doesn't work, then close down Eclipse and bring it back up fresh. Upon every entry, you'll notice it runs a little bit slow in the beginning because it's rebuilding everything. Rebuilds the r.java file, rebuilds your package, rebuilds everything. So it'll refresh your memory for you. So the other thing you can do is go into project, and there's this option called clean. You click on clean. I only have one project, but you can select, select all projects or clean projects individually and select OK. What does that do? Same thing you did if you closed Eclipse and brought it back up again. It cleans out the cache, rebuilds all your r.javas, just resets the environment for you, saves everything, does everything, so it cleans it out. So why? Because the Android people know that that's a common problem. So might as well just clean it without having to reboot it or reset it. So, all right, so we changed the layout. Oops, I'm in main. Let me open up the nameGetter. So now we have the layout set to nameGetter. We don't have any error messages, so we can continue. So, how late does this class go till? Perfect. We're going to actually go that time today because I think we can probably get through this tutorial, and that way we'll put us in good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and work ahead here because this really needs to get done in one sitting. All right, so now we're going to modify the nameGetter or the get name, and we're going to, so it extends the activity, but we're going to add this implements, and it implements the Android view on-click listener because we're going to add an on-click listener to it. So for Java people, this is an interface. and we extend the interface and we we implement interfaces and we extend from previous objects to inherit from them. Get the deedle and deedle, read chapter 1. I guarantee it that'll make a lot more sense to you because I can't teach you Java at the same time. I'm going to be sloppy. I'm going to cut and paste. So if you have this PDF file, I just copied it, excuse me. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add the interface now. So I'm going to go back to Eclipse. I'm in my name getter. So I can extend activity space, and then I'm going to put in here implements Android view on view.view.onClick listener. And you're going to wonder, why in the world do we have all that stuff in there? And then it's going to say, well, what is this here? A little message here. It says must implement the inherited abstract methods on the class. Yep. An interface is sort of like a contract. If we implement an interface, that means we abide by the contracts. The contract says we have to have an on-click listener, and we have to have this method, we have to have that method. We can do it automatically by implementing the classes that aren't implemented by using the automation, or we can put the classes in manually, depending upon how we want to do it. Another thing that I wanted to show you is the syntax here. I could take out the Android view and just put an on-click listener. If I do that, then I have to make sure that this is in my package imports, because I didn't import it before. So if I hover my mouse over, I can see that this is actually going to make some sense. It's going to say import on-click listener Android context dialog interface, which is that first option. You can't read it on my screen, but if you hover your mouse over the little the red squiggly, you take out all the Android view.view, and you just put on-click listener, you're going to need to add the imports. And the import on the top is the wrong one. It's actually the second one I want, which was Android view.view. So if I click on there, I see it automatically got put in there for me. Now I have another cheat sheet method. What I'm trying to do is orient you to the interface here. Don't be afraid to hover your mouse over get name. And if I hover my mouse over get name, it's going to say add the unimplemented methods. Yeah. Because remember, I'm implementing an on-click listener. It's an interface. Requires me to implement these methods. I don't have the methods implemented. If I put my mouse over the little red X over here, it's going to tell me that the type name getter must implement the inherited abstract method, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. So I'm going to play a game here. I'm going to put my mouse over here. I'm going to say, yeah, okay, add the unimplemented methods. If I click on it, add that, lo and behold, all my error messages went away. Now I have the on-click listener that was added for me. So unfortunately, it's like a double-edged sword. If you don't know what you're doing and you follow through that little automation and selecting the items, you could possibly get in trouble. If you do know what you're doing and you follow through and you are able, like for this one I had to select the second item and not the first one. If I do know what I'm doing and I've seen it before, the system will actually help automate things for you. But it's kind of a manual automation. You got to hover your mouse over, read it, go, oh, and then pick the best one. And sometimes it's not always the first choice. Like in that case, it was the second choice for this guy here. Because there's two on-click listeners, and I needed the second one, not the first one. But once you get familiar with it, and that was a kind of a cheat sheet because this is what was written here originally. So that's obviously the better choice of the two. Anyway, long story short, it's double-edged because it works for you when it really does work for you. But when you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't work for you. So, all right, so we put in the on-click listener. My instructions, what I'm doing is slightly different than these instructions. These instructions are having you do it manually. So we're not going to cut and paste and put that in there. We're good. But now we're going to declare a data member. And we're going to declare this data member as an edit text. We're going to call it name. So one of the interesting things is that we put it inside of the opening and closing class bracket. So if I come back up here and go, well, if I'm going to put a data member in here, I'm going to put it right here. If we were inside of Objective-C, how many people are taking the Objective-C class? You're going to love this. It's like night and day, like black and white. It's going to totally be different. but you'll actually appreciate this because this is more logical. So the Objective-C class, Objective-C as a language is not quite as easy as this is. So for those of you who know C or C++ or BASIC, you know when we declare variables, we go like, integer I, and that works. And then integer is the data type, and get a DEDL and DEDL text if this is new. And I is the name of the variable. We did the same thing here. But we got this little red thing. We're like, what's wrong with the red thing? So I put my mouse over here and it says, oh, import edit text. Yeah, because it doesn't know about that object type. So we do have to import edit text. So if I select the top one here, then I've got in here a new item that was put in here. Import android.widget.edit text. Well, you don't have to do that with integer, float, and double, but you could. So, but basically we had to import the data type to use it. And the data type's an object. So, all right, so we got our name, because where are we going to get this name from? From the name getter. We're going to take whatever the user typed into that text field. We're going to put it into this variable called name, and we're going to take the name, we're going to put it on the screen. This is about as hello world as you can get. So let's see. Now on the onCreates, we have all this stuff that was given for us. We actually did this part already. We changed it to name getter. So I kind of worked ahead a little bit on this one here. So we have to add this line of code to initialize name, because we have this edit text name. So what is this name going to be? Name is going to be this object.findViewById. Well, what's the view that we're going to have? And this is going to be wrong for us because I didn't change the views. I didn't change the IDs. So if I cut and paste and put this in, I'm going to get an error message. I'm expecting that because I got to go figure out, well, what was it called? So on my onCreate, when the object loads up, it's going to set the context view to nameGetter. And inside nameGetter, I have a name for the text field, the edit text. So I can have name equal to the edit text. It shouldn't find, actually it does find it. Was it called edit text? I'm going to go take a look actually. In nameGetter, I have, it was called edit text 1. By default, I didn't change it, so it's called edit text 1. So over here, and this is now the good reason why the tabs actually work in this case. I can come over here and say, what was that called over there? My edit text, where the user typed in their name, it was called edit text. So I'm going to take and find the view by the ID. The viewer, okay, so we have the view, which is the window, and we have all the subviews inside of the window. And the subviews are the text fields and the input boxes and the buttons. They're all view items. They all fall in the same category. Those are the model view controller. They're all view categories. So take the view, find the item that's called edit text 1, which we did, have it equal to name. This is a typecast. This is an object cast. It says turn it into an edit text. So get a DEDL and DEDL book, homework, read a couple first chapters. That might make a little bit more sense. We're casting this because this is text. This is actually a string format. We need to take the string, cast it to an edit text because this is an edit text. We called it name. So now name is equal to that. So now we can do stuff with name. We can print it to the screen. We can do whatever we want with it. So now we're going to make, so we made a call. So now what we're going to do here then is implement the onClick listener. So when the person on the name getter, and I am good, I am editing name getter, or get name, which is good. For a minute there I thought maybe I was editing the wrong one. When the user clicks the button, then we're going to take the name and we're going to do something with it. So we have the button here. It's going to be the button. We have the name, which is going to be the name. So we're still in the onCreate, by the way. I'm going to add this one here to get the button. So we can use the button status to determine what we're going to do with this name. So we put this line of code in the next step. And unfortunately, what this tutorial is doing is just repeating all of the code that's already there. So all this stuff in here is already there, except for, you can't see it, the one I just highlighted here. This is the new line that we're adding. So go ahead and copy, put this one in. We're still in the onCreate. We're still in nameGetter. And we're going to put it underneath. And it's button 1. And we're going to have the same problem as we had before. I'm actually going to put it up here. I'm going to put this in here. It's called button, button, button. And I'm going to put my mouse over here. So it's going to say import the button. Now, okay, we don't have the widget, the button widget. We got the button widget in here. If I didn't want to put it up here, I could put it down here. If I put it up here, this is global scope for the entire class. It's a member of the class or the object. It's a property of the object. If I put it in here, this is a method, a subpart of the object. It's only visible in here. So if I want a method that's going to be on create, wait for this button click, when the button click happens, do this, yada, yada, yada. If I don't make it global, I don't make it part of the object, then it's hidden inside of the onCreate. Once the onCreate's over with, I don't see this information anymore. So I put the reference to the object out here, make it part of the object's identity, and then inside the onCreate, I can populate the object and use the object outside of it. So there's a reason why we're doing it that way. So deedle and deedle text. So then we're going to make a call to the button.setOnClickListener so that we can put a listener on it. So we're going to add this line of code here that comes underneath it. So we've implemented the onClickListener, but we have to tell the listener to listen to the button. So underneath this code here, and if you don't want to do all this, just open up the solution file and you'll see it all written for you. We've added the button.setOnClickListener to this. This is ourselves. Super is the object above us. It has to do with the hierarchy. So super is above us, this is us. So this, we have an onClickListener. We'll put it on the button. That's all this is saying. So we've added the listener to the button. Now we need to fill in the onClick method stub. So we have something that happens with the onClickListener. What are we going to do? We're going to retrieve the entered text from the text field and keep it in a local string and then create an intent, which is how we're going to load the other activity. We're going to use this thing called an intent. So Android's kind of interesting. Only one activity runs at a time. And if we want to run another activity, we do something that's called registering an intent. It's like, I have this intention, I want to run this other activity. So we create an intent. We say, we intend to run this other activity. And then we have this way of bundling up the data to pass it. It's like, going back to Unix, it's like a Unix pipe. This is a Unix system, by the way, or a Unix-like system. We're going to pipe the information from this activity and send it to that activity through the intent, which is kind of an interesting way of doing it. So on the onClickListener, we need to create the intent. So I'm going to copy these two lines of code here and put it in the onClick. So here we have the to-do auto-generated method stub. It's on our to-do list. We have to fill this in. So I'm going to paste in here the two lines of code, and you see I can have a line return that comes in. And don't be alarmed. Oh, I've got some error messages. Not a big deal. It means I need to import them in. So I'm going to fix that problem first. So I'm going to hover my mouse over and I'm going to import the intent. Sure, why not? So I selected to import the intent. Now all the error messages went away and we're all happy again. So creating a new instance of an object, and the object type is intent, and it's called myIntent. So intent, myIntent is equal to new intent. Well, what's new intent? Well, it's going to be this main activity.class. This is the class that, you can put a space or not a space, it doesn't really matter. This is the class up here, main activity, that I'd like to run. So my get name is going to create an intent that loads, my intention is to load main activity. Activity is going to run second. My intent is going to run, it's going to run it. And then my intent.put extras, what's it going to put extras in? Well, we're going to call it inside of the intent, we're going to call it uname for username. And it's really going to be name.getText.toString. Because up here, name is an edit text, and it is found by the r.id from the edit text. But we need to convert it to a string, because right now it's an edit text. So most people go, why don't you just keep it as a string? Could have converted this to a string right here. No need to, but we didn't. So we can do it here with a toString. Objects, all objects have two strings. So isn't it easier just to run a toString on it? If you've taken Java before, you can kind of sense that logic, but if not, just work with me. So name.getText.toString. It's going to take the name, and then it's going to put it into a variable called uname. So over in main activity, we can use a uname out of the intent and use it and print it to the screen. All right, so then next we're going to make a call to this.activity. So we're going to add in here to say this start activity my intent. So prior to this line, we've basically said, well, we have the intention of running this other activity. If you leave out this line that says this.start activity my intent, we're not starting it yet. Because we can create as many intents as we want. We can have like 5 different windows, 5 different classes and stuff, and how do you think people go back and forth between different windows and intent? So this is how we're switching in between this screen and that screen over there. See, in iOS, we create a storyboard and we just drag things together. Android, it's more manual. We have to create these intentions, and then we have to start the intention. Okay, start this one, start that one, start this one. So it's like a domino. One activity starts another activity that starts another activity that goes back and starts the first activity. So we're constantly creating intents and passing information back and forth between the windows and loading and unloading windows. So we have one window, which is one XML file, that's associated with one class file. So, and this is really the controller mechanism that's controlling the visual showing and unshowing of these windows. So take it, we did this about 100 more times before this class is over with. This is just your first exposure to it. And my technique is show you over and over again. So we'll see this again. Long story short, but take it with a grain of salt just to start out with. So this command will initiate the switch to the main activity. So now we need to reconfigure the hello application. So the Android manifest is the traffic guard. And the manifest is down here on the bottom. So if we click on the manifest, we open it up, we see that it's got a little textual interface to it. It also has an XML tab, so we click on the XML tab. And we can see the first thing happens here is we're going to load up the activity. And what activity is it going to load up? We have this activity listed. You see this activity opening and activity closing tag. Kind of hard to see it on that screen, but you might see it on your computer a little bit easier. You double click and open up the manifest and click on the XML tag. That activity is going to start. You can try it out actually. You just run the application right now. You're going to get main activity. So we're going to need to switch this because we want namegetter to run first. We don't want main activity. But we also need to tell the manifest about our other application, their main activity. So if we switch we need to add both activities. Because unless the manifest knows about it, it can't run it. So that's why I called it a traffic cop. It sort of is the controller of all of this. So double click the manifest, open it up, and we see we're going to change this here. We're going to change, leave the path name alone. Just change the main activity. Instead of main activity, change it to namegetter or get name. So over here where I see, where do I see it? Here it is. I see activity in my application. So outside of application here, inside of application, excuse me, I have activity. I'm going to change the activity. Instead of saying main activity, I'm going to change it to my other one because I want my other one to load first. It's called get name. Because get name is going to call main activity. So I've changed my activity. So this declares that we're going to have that going on. And here's the big one. And unfortunately, this tutorial has reprinted the entire manifest. So the finished manifest looks like this. So we also want to add So we want to add the tag for, we just took main activity out because we changed the main activity to get name. We need to put main activity back in there, but we don't want it to be the starting activity. It's going to be the activity that we use with the intent. So we're going to add the following, and between the opening and the closing activity tag pair, underneath the activity tag pair you just modified, nested within the application tag. So if I copy this here and come back over here, I see I have an application, opening and closing. So I'm going to put some space down here on the bottom. I have an activity, opening and closing, and then I have another activity, opening and closing. Well, I have that one in there too. Wow. I'm going to put another one in here. And the one I'm going to put in here is the one that I just took out because I changed it. Now this is all on one line. It can be on one line, or you could put a line return in here if you wanted to. Now I have an opening and closing activity. But what I've got now is the main activity added to my manifest. So I have both added to the manifest. If you run into trouble, what you can do is cut and paste the manifest out of the sample file, or you can cut and paste it out of here. Only problem is some of the build information might be different. So in here we've got the intent here, the intent filter. Let's see if I got the intent filter in here. Intent filter, internet activity main. Looks like I'm doing pretty good here. All right, so I'm going to come back over here and look at the next line of the instructions. Greeting the user. So on the main activity, we still have to finish out the functionality to put the name getter into the main activity. So we're almost done with this actually. So now that we've got it retrieved, we're going to need to change the onCreate of main activity, and we're going to add a couple lines of code here. So in the onCreate method of main activity, we're going to get the bundle from my inputs from the get intent, and just take this at face value. In fact, you can close the manifest now. We don't need it. Save it, close it. Now open up, I'm going to close these screens so I don't accidentally get the wrong one. So now I'm in main activity. Oops, I got a manifest error. What's my manifest error? First activity name getter. This one says it's a duplicate. Yeah, because I just put it in. Let me get rid of this guy. Just going to take the duplicate out. You can only have each activity needs to be in there once. Because this automated it for me and put it in there, it was already in there. And when I changed a main to it, you might have to get rid of the duplicate if you have a duplicate get name activity, which is what I just had a few minutes ago. So it likes to automate. So now I have all my red that went away. So I'm going to open up main activity. And inside of main activity, inside the onCreate, I'm going to get the intent. So bundle my intent is going to be equal to this dot get intent get extras. That's the uname that came out of it. Uname is what I sent from the name edit text. So, and you can see that there's like this little yellow thing over here, and it's really a warning. It's not an error message. And the warning says the value of the local variable my intent is not used. Yeah, I know. I just put this in here. I haven't used it yet. So I haven't done running my code yet. So you can set a reference to the text view object, which is what we have, and which is what we did already, the text view 2. Let's see. What are we doing here? Oh, we're going to change the main.xml. We're going to change the activity. Well, you could cut and paste this actually, or you can just add another text view. So here, let me show you another little trick here. So the other reason why I like the XML interface is because here it's giving me a change to make to the XML interface for the main activity. So I figured if I don't want to type anything, I can just take this relative layout, opening and closing bracket, and just paste it in. So I've just highlighted it, and I've selected to copy it. I'm going to open up the main, activity main, and I'm going to go into my activity main. I'm just going to take all this stuff out of here, which is all that stuff I put in there. Remember the little stuff I was playing around with to begin with? Because I know it's all wrong. And I'm just going to paste this one in here. And if I paste it in here, then I can see that the formatting kind of got messed up. There's an auto format you can use on it, or I can just leave it alone, save it. And if I open it back up and I can switch over to the graphical view, now I see I have a text view down here, text view 2. And I can still even after I've pasted it in, I can still move stuff around. I mean, I can still edit it, but what I did was I showed you how you can just simply replace an interface with another interface by just removing what's there on the XML interface and just pasting some new XML code in there, which is what I did. All I did was remove all the garbage that I had in there, and I put a text field back in there. But you got to remember what you called the text field. This one's called text view 2, because we're going to call it here. Because we're going to change the text view 2 to say, hello, what your name is, Barbara Hecker. So, all right, so if we go back to the onCreate method, the onCreate, after we've put in the bundle, we're going to take and populate that text view. So I'm going to cut and paste this code and stick it in here. And this is the last line, actually. So if I shut this main activity XML down, come in here and paste in here on the onCreate, I've got a text view. And in my text view, I'm setting it to, let's see, make sure this looks a little better here. I'm setting the text view to hello space input.getString uname. So it's kind of like a dictionary lookup. It's taking from the intent that I created, and I passed the bundle, and I called it uname, remember from the previous get name. And now I'm going to show it in here, and I've got this red stuff, and the red stuff I already know ahead of time. It's because I don't have a text view in this one. So I'm going to go hover my mouse over, and it says import text view. Sure, why not? All the little red stuff goes away. Now we're looking good. Don't be afraid when you see the red stuff. The red stuff means you probably have to fix your imports. So it should do it for you automatically. It does, actually, in some cases. So now, the text view, I created a new local object, and so I didn't put text view t. Instead, I put text view t is going to be equal to new text view this, and I put it all in one line down here, just to show you that you don't have to declare the variable first, the data member first. It's not being used as a data member; it's just being declared locally. And then in here, I said t is going to be equal to, well, let's cast a text view to find view by ID text view 2. That's what I just pasted into the XML interface. And then t.setText. And I'm going to set it to hello plus, I'm going to plus concatenate to it my input.getString uname. So it's going to be saying hello, whatever I type into that box. So let's see if I've done this correctly. Run the application, it should work. If it doesn't work, I go back and I open up the solution. But let's just see. I don't know if I have my manifest set correctly, actually, but we'll see what happens. So far so good. I decided to run it. And I got the little box up here, and it says 2.37. Okay, so I'll run it. Let's see what happens. And here's my box, and it says enter your name. So I'm going to put in here B Hecker. Oops, where'd the B go? Here it is. And press OK. Oops, put my mouse in here. My mouse is funny. Hello, B Hecker. So voila, it works. If this does not work for you, download the solution, load it in. Don't give up. Compare the solution with what you did. Get this working for next week. If it's not working, get it working. If you can't get don't worry if you haven't got your VirtualBox emulator installed. Don't worry about it. If depending upon your computer system, you may not even be able to use it. Don't worry about that. You can always use the built-in Android emulators. Get that working. Get something working. Because next week, we're jumping into tutorial number 2. We're going to take this with less configuration, more coding. We're going to go through all the different types of activities. So we have activities, and we have services, and we have broadcast receivers and senders. And I got a bunch of technical stuff to give you in terms of the platform, and we got to get past the fundamentals of getting it to work. So If your Java skills are a little minimal, do a Google search, go on Amazon, see if you can get a Deedle and Deedle text. It'll be well worth the money. Well worth the money. Just make sure you get Java 2 and above. Don't go any lower than 2. Get everything working, and I will see you next week for full speed ahead. And I will hang out to fix problems. So hold on, if you have a problem, now's your opportunity. I'm going to fix it for you. So, and otherwise, we're done with today. I can get my mouse out. Yes, I can. Perfect.